the more they would be proper Muslims. But what tends to happen anecdotally from my experience is that you have parents that are lax, usually just have kids that may end up being atheists, but they are not hostile to Islam or religion. However, those that are brought up in very strict families, and the more strict and whenever they notice that the incongruence between what the parents are saying and how they act, they become very hostile to it because it's driven by psychological motivations, as shown by some studies. Then there's also a study that shows that high use of internet correlates with the early set-in of doubt. Now, I'm not advocating censoring internet because that's good luck with that, right, if you want to do that. But it's about empowering people, and especially the younger ones, so that they're able to face these things as opposed to sheltering them from it, because there's no escape from that. Okay, so to the points that I would like to make within the time, inshallah, is so basically this is a new frontier, and we have to deal with it. This is where the lines are drawn, and we just have to face it and stop, in a sense, ignoring it. Because there's a tendency, as a child of Nigerian parents, and who has a lot of parents here as well, is that we tend to want to hide things and play the ostriches in Nigerian families. And it's always been baffling to me. It's almost as if we pretend something is not happening, or if we can keep it within the house, and you can see with drug problems a lot, then perhaps no one is going to know about it. Maybe, but we need people to talk about it more so that there can be alliance, so that we can share experiences and actually deal with it as a community instead of isolated islands. Like I said, it's really a form of activism, because now it has been packaged as a form of activism. Then people find meaning in actually not just psychological satisfaction from being antagonistic to Islam, but actual meaning in life, because many people are just activists for the most part. That's where they derive their meanings in life. And you see all the things that you consider as atrocities from Islam, and now you have all these motivation to actually go against it. Another point is that the responses we get, Brother Nurruddeen mentioned it, but some of them are just baffling. There were times when some things made headlines, spectacles in Nigeria about some northerners, northern Muslims who were openly atheists, and they were willing to take on the challenge to face people. And the response from the people and from those people who were responding to them were just baffling, because if that is the type of response you get, why wouldn't you be an atheist? In fact, at the time I had a number of conversations with some of my colleagues at work, and most of them would just say, you know what, don't ask these questions, ignore them, right? This is their attitude. And because I had the privilege of actually talking to some of them, not to convert them, because that would be another job entirely, and that's hidayah huda from God, inshallah. But it's just to find out what motivates them. And some of the issues they raise, because these are Muslims, mind you, they're not making a caricature of Islam. This is an experience they've lived throughout their lives and things they know. One of them raised an issue. A lot of the issues they raised, unfortunately, I figured these are things that have been dealt with. Most of the questions this particular person was mentioning, I have these problems with Muslims and Islam, right? But I found it elsewhere within the Islamic discourse. You don't need to leave Islam to find answers to these things. But there was a question he raised. He brought a hadith from Sahih Bugaje about the killing of geckos. He says, what religion would do that? What has the gecko done to deserve killing Saka? Right? We were very violent to Saka in Nigeria. It's like, and it's just, I told him, you know what, this is the hadith I've had a problem with. I've never investigated it. I didn't think it was such a big issue, but I don't even have the answer. I don't even know how to respond to you. For all these other issues, I can point you to where you can find solutions to it, who has talked about it and whatnot. But for this, I don't know. I have a problem with it, but you don't see me taking broom and chasing Saka whenever I see it. right? I've decided, well, it's not in instruction, it's not made compulsory based on the hadith that I've seen, so I just leave it until I figure it out. But that's not enough to leave to make me leave the religion. Perhaps some of these issues will come during questions and answers. Let me just add one more point. Is that I think, sorry, 2 points. The first is that the environment in Nigeria is actually very ripe for this thing at the moment. It's quite ripe because I'm not sure if we follow the Islamophobic discourse, almost very Orientalistic version of Islam, and now with the Muslim president, you see it in the press saying there's this Islamization of Nigeria, and maybe we shrug when we see that or we put it aside, but no, this is coming from a narrative that has shaped the West all the way back to the Crusades. The Crusade was made because of stuff like that after the conquest of Jerusalem, right? Now, this narrative, you hear it amongst Nigerians, and you know Islamophobia is there. Maybe not the version that you have here, but I'm just trying to show the mirrors and how it's very ripe for that. So when you have that, it means they are in alliance with whichever Muslim will try to attack Islam now. There is that support from those who are anti-Islam, and that's very current in Nigeria as much as here. And the last point is that it all comes down to metaphysics. And that is, maybe I'll just leave you with that. Metaphysics, and perhaps if we want to discuss the discourse of it and the argument, we need to revert back to Kalam, as Brother Nur has mentioned, but the metaphysics are worldview. It's with the worldview that we have, or that we don't have, which is probably the problem. And it's the case with worldview and philosophy. If you don't have any laid out clearly, then someone is going to have it for you. And you always have it, and it's decided by someone. So these contradictions are just a result of some of the worldviews we have. They are inevitable. You find Muslims sometimes we stick into a worldview just playing circus and doing some mental gymnastics around some issues. But the problem is from the worldview. So I hope it's something we can focus on and pay attention to. Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah, it's really difficult bit quite well. As we said, we will allow some questions, and I will want the organizers to please let us know how much more time we have for this session. As you can see, it is quite a relevant topic. Now, just before I call on the first person to ask the question, I want to ask one question of my own. And this I will direct to So, apparently we have 10 minutes. Okay. So, the first question of my own I want to direct to Brother Nurruddeen is, you know, as part of the teaching, in a lot of cases, when we are asked questions, we are advised to point out that it's because I'm doing it because I'm a Muslim. I believe in, I have the Iman, and I'm doing it because I'm a Muslim. That is taught by a lot of teachers to be the basis, initial basis of discussion. So if you come across somebody who is not a Muslim or somebody who has doubts, is that still a valid way of approaching answering a question? I don't know how you want to make it. Do you want to make note and then we, okay. So I will call on to Dr. Abdullah Shehu, and then after that,
stop the background noise, please, so we can have the maximum benefit of this time.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Sounds like all the speakers really for beautiful introduction to the subject. I'm probably not asking questions, but also making a small comment and putting some splitters back on us. I don't believe atheism is atheism as they see it. I see it as a new religion. And it is a new religion. Because to even believe there is no God inhabited, then it's a religion. And we cannot sit back and just look at it without taking it serious in all respects. And my interaction with people from other parts of the world, Muslim world, they've been complaining of exactly the same thing happening in Nigeria and here, and the youth more or less going into some kind of moral decadence and questioning the existence of God and questioning religion, most likely because they don't get the right answers, and most likely because they don't see their leaders leading by examples. And that includes the parents as well as the country leaders and so on and so forth. So the solution to this is huge, but we have to start somewhere. My little question and challenge here to us is, I need to see the committee led by some of you there at the front to actually give us some of the immediate answers to these questions that have been posed by our youth regarding atheist, mediated or motivated questions, so that we can have them either as a book or as something, as a material that can be shared, and so that all of us can be educated in this. And the youth can also have the opportunity to answer it. The media here does not make things very nice either, because it challenges all the time. I mean, I unfortunately happen to be one of those in Coventry that any atrocity happens in the world, I get a phone call from BBC to comment. To the point that I stopped commenting. But then when I stopped commenting, some people else will be asked to comment and they will say the wrong thing.
Yes.
So you then have to find and say, what is the best way to respond? And you have to devise a wisdom to say, this is how I answer these questions, and alhamdulillah, that's how we do it. But all I'm asking the committee here, really those who are speaking here, I want us to formulate a committee that will look at putting something in writing that we can share amongst ourselves. And we can look at also how to educate us in answering these questions as parents or even responding to them. It's easy for us to say, I don't know. But most of us as parents, we don't say that.
Okay.
From
Now, I would want to select somebody from the back, please. The gentleman with glasses, yes.
My name is Shehu, and thank you very much for the panel. I'll try not to take more than a minute. I just want to make a comment and a question. Especially for most of us here, you have young children, it is time for you to make sure you update yourself. You can never avoid the children asking you questions. I remember a few years ago, Shehu told me about a book, and maybe you bought the first book for me. Help, I'm Losing My Religion, by Professor Jeffrey Lang. It was good that I read that book, because just after that, my daughter were walking in London and she asked me a question. She said, what will you do if I become a Christian? I said, no, don't shout, don't shout. I said, no, I'm not going to shout. But because I've read that book, I've seen that question in that book, and the answer I gave her resolved the problem. Although she said, I'm just asking because I want to know your reaction. When you deal with that question as if it is a real question, and this is very important. Second question she asked me, why do Muslims hate gays and lesbians? Now, they ask this question because they are coming from this society that taught them you must tolerate, you must accept, okay? And that those who don't accept are extremists. And when I finished answering that question, she calmed down. And so there are questions like this, you must be ready. My children are grown now, and I had them speaking recently. They said, you know, we used to think our parents, they know everything. They said, when we were young, all the way you answer all our questions, we used to think you're God, you know everything. Until they start asking questions beyond my limits. Mathematics and science, and I couldn't answer them. So then they start seeing the limitations of parents. But the point I'm trying to make is you must be ready to answer questions, never ignore, never argue, never be angry. Answer the questions, they will accept your answer, even if it's not right. But then go back, find out more, and top up the answer. Okay. My question is this, you asked that we need to spend about 20 hours to study Kawaii and Mukasid. Now, what will help is that you can't provide the answers. You can't give us all the answers we know. But what will help is point us to certain sources. People are here, they'll go buy the books, their time, 20 hours video. What are those books that are useful for parents here on those topics, and also on those questions that our children do ask? And by the way, all your answers, I know some of them are recorded. When are you going to flood online with them? Because that is where we need them to point our children to.
Thank you. So, now,
This side.
so I will, on the women's side, let's take another question from the women's side.
Just press it on your mouth. Press it on your mouth. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So thank you very much to all the speakers. I'll try and be as fast as possible, but I've got a comment and a question as well, unfortunately.